والآخرة. الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون. هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. الرحمن الرحيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله تحصنا بالله. بسم الله توكلنا بالله. بسم الله تحصنا بالله. بسم الله توكلنا بالله. بسم الله تحصنا بالله. بسم الله توكلنا بالله. بسم الله آمنا بالله. ومن يؤمن بالله لا خوف عليه. بسم الله آمنا بالله. ومن يؤمن بالله لا خوف عليه. بسم الله آمنا بالله. ومن يؤمن بالله لا خوف عليه. سبحان الله عز الله. سبحان الله جل الله. سبحان الله عز الله. سبحان الله جل الله. سبحان الله وبحمده. سبحان الله العظيم. سبحان الله وبحمده. سبحان الله العظيم. سبحان الله وبحمده. سبحان الله العظيم. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. يا لطيفا بخلقه يا عليما بخلقه يا خبيرا بخلقه ألطف بنا يا لطيف يا عليم يا خبير. يا لطيفا بخلقه يا عليما بخلقه يا خبيرا بخلقه يا لطيف يا عليم يا خبير. يا لطيفا بخلقه يا عليما بخلقه يا خبيرا بخلقه التف بنا يا لطيف يا عليم يا خبير. يا لطيفا لم يزل التف بنا فيما نزل إنك لطيف لم تزل التف بنا والمسلمين. يا لطيفا لم يزل التف بنا فيما نزل إنك لطيف لم تزل التف بنا والمسلمين. يا لطيفا لم يزل التف بنا فيما نزل إنك لطيف لم تزل التف بنا والمسلمين. لا إله إلا الله 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 إلا الله لا إله 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 إلا الله لا إلا الله لا إله 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 إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل 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 حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد اللهم صل عليه وسلم. اللهم صل على 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 محمد اللهم صل عليه وسلم. أستغفر الله 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 أستغفر الله. تائبون إلى الله تائبون إلى الله تائبون إلى الله. يا الله بها يا الله بحسن الخاتمة يا الله بها يا الله بها يا الله بحسن الخاتمة يا الله بها يا الله بها يا الله بحسن الخاتمة غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. الفاتحة إلى هدرة سيدنا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا رسول الله محمد بن عبد الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وآله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذرياته بأن الله يعلي درجاتهم في الجنة وينفعنا بأسرارهم وأنوارهم وعلومهم في الدين والدنيا والآخرة ويجعلنا من حزبهم ويرزقنا محبتهم ويتوفانا على ملتهم ويحشرنا في زمرتهم. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. الفاتحة إلى روح سيدنا المهاجر لله أحمد بن عيسى وسيدنا الفقيه المقدم محمد بن علي بعلوي وأصولهما وفروعهم وجميع ساداتنا آل بعلوي وذوي الحقوق عليهم أجمعين أن الله يغفر لهم ويرحمهم ويعلي درجاتهم في الجنة وينفعنا بأسرارهم وأنوارهم وعلومهم في الدين والدنيا والآخرة. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم. الفاتحة إلى روح سيدنا وحبيبنا وبركتنا صاحب الراتب قطب الأنفاس الحبيب عمر بن عبد الرحمن العطاس وإلى روح الشيخ علي بن عبد الله برأس ثم إلى روح سيدنا وحبيبنا وبركتنا وقدوتنا ومرشدنا الإمام الحبيب أحمد بن حسن بن عبد الله العطاس وأصولهم وفروعهم وذوي الحقوق عليهم أجمعين أن الله يغفر لهم ويرحمهم ويعلي درجاتهم في الجنة وينفعنا بأسرارهم وأنوارهم وعلومهم ونفحاتهم في الدين والدنيا والآخرة. الفاتحة. الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. الفاتحة إلى أرواح الأولياء والشهداء والصالحين والأئمة الراشدين ثم إلى أرواح والدينا ومشايخنا ومعلمينا وذوي الحقوق علينا أجمعين ثم إلى أرواح أموات المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات أن الله يغفر لهم ويرحمهم ويعلي درجاتهم في الجنة وينفعنا بأسرارهم وأنوارهم وعلومهم في الدين والدنيا والآخرة. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. الفاتحة بالقبول وتمام كل سؤل ومأمول وصلاح الشأن ظاهرا وباطنا في الدين والدنيا والآخرة دافعة لكل شر جالبة لكل خير لنا ولأحبابنا ولوالدينا ومشايخنا في الدين مع اللطف والعافية وعلى نية أن الله ينور قلوبنا وقوالبنا مع التقى والهدى والعفاف والموت على دين الإسلام والإيمان بلا مهنة ولا امتحان بحق سيد ولد عدنان ولكل نية صالحة وإلى هدرة الحبيب محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ومن والاه. الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم. تفضلوا افتح المجلس تكلم شيء. آمين lah. Mukadimah sikit. Ya baik insyaAllah. Ya, Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Hamdan lillahin huwa bilhamdi haqiq. Fi bahri nawalihi kanatid daratin gharik. Segala puji bagi Allah Subhanahu wa taala yang selayaknya baginya segala pujian hamba-Nya. Dan di dalam lautan karamnya itu telah karamlah akan beberapa arwah para salihin, para anbiya, para awliya. Dan mereka itulah para nabi-nabi, para wali-wali dan para siddiq. Mereka lah yang menjelaskan bagi kita akan jalan at-tariq, memayyazut tariq. Dan barang siapa yang beroleh taufik, maka mengikutilah akan jalan dan cara mereka itu. Wa illa fasara mulhid wa zindiq. sekiranya tiada mengikuti akan jalan mereka itu, jadilah mereka kaum mulhid dan zindik. Begitulah kalam Syekh Nuruddin Ar-Raniri atau kama qal dalam karya beliau yang agung, yaitu Hujjatus Siddiq li Daf'iz Zindik, yang mana dalamnya Syekh Nuruddin Ar-Raniri memperjelaskan akan perkara-perkara yang luhur berkenaan dengan agama Islam, berkenaan dengan faham tauhid, berkenaan dengan Allah Subhanahu wa taala, berkenaan perhubungannya dan tentang ciptaan alam, berhubungan halnya dengan hal segala ciptaannya, dan juga tentang mazhab-mazhab pemikiran dan jalan-jalan yang menyampaikan kepada Allah Subhanahu wa taala. I forgot, this is an English crowd, isn't it? Anyways, Alhamdulillah, we meet again. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to say, that al-waqt istadar, that time returns time and again. There will always be time, inshallah, that you repeat certain things in order that there will be more barakah. Alhamdulillah, the second time in our meeting, first I would like to recount some of the things that we discussed the last time that we were here. We discussed on the concept of religion and the foundation of ethics and morality. And although it wasn't a page-to-page reading, I gave you the general overview and the general idea of what was contained in that chapter. One of the things I mentioned was about the tradition of knowledge that our scholars espouse, in which Professor Naqib Al-Attas is one of its inheritors. The tradition of knowledge of Islam flows from revelation, from Al-Quran Al-Karim, from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who received revelation and education from Allah Subhanahu wa taala. So therefore, whatever that flowed from that tradition, there is barakah. And whatever that flowed from that tradition, the first generation of Muslims and the scholars after them has taken great care to preserve the knowledge and to preserve the means to acquire such knowledge. And one of the things that our ulama paid close attention to was language, because the Quran, as Allah Subhanahu wa ta'ala's kalam, as the mu'jizah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was sent as a verbal document in one sense. Yeah. And so the language, the words there, yes, represents what Allah Subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the creator of the universe, intended. So therefore, the very words which are used in the Quran are very important. The key terms that are reflected therein reflect and project for us the worldview of Islam. And we said about one of the fundamental and central key terms that has shifted in terms of its meaning, which we discussed last week, was the meaning of religion. And by means of comparison, we said that this term religion, which Professor Al-Attas has used to translate the Arabic and the Quranic usage, which was ad-din, yes, has its own history, has its own connotations, has its own contents. And we explained about how, despite the greatness of the Western tradition, despite the greatness and the expansion of the languages as a result of coming into contact with the Greek world, the Latin tradition, and other European languages, yet the best word that they have come up with to reflect the relationship between mankind and God is still religion. And the term religion, when compared to ad-din, is found at a very distant. And then we said that this term din, as it was used in the Quran, as it is used amongst the Arabs to reflect even in terms of their day-to-day communication, reflected something very profound. That is because the term religion, which came from the Latin religio, reflect something like something that binds man and God. Yes, like mengikat gitu, that binds between man and the gods. It was used amongst the early Latin church fathers to refer to the practices and the rituals of the pagans, say the religion of the pagans, like that. Yes, because for them, Christianity, being shaped as it was in Latin, had to use many words to reflect what it is, Christianity itu. Was it a faith? Was it a philosophy? because they were facing all these challenges. So there were changes, and this has been demonstrated by their own historians of ideas, the likes of Wilfred Cantwell Smith. Yes, he explained about how the term religion only acquired importance in the West quite recently. That means to say during the modern period. Before that, some of the scholars looked at it with disdain. Some may have used it, but did not put for it as a term of central importance. Be that as it may, the term religion as it is used in the present day discourse in the West has a particular pedigree through which it developed. Yes, the term religion, for example, has been used by Kant. Yes, as a title of one of his books, Religion Within the Limits of Reason. The term religion is used by Jean-Jacques Rousseau in his writing on social contract. There he used the word religion as what you call civic religion. So that means to say it is a construct. It is an idea that their philosophers and their thinkers and their scholars have constructed to denote some activity that binds the people together, even if they don't have a God anymore, or even if their God have been secularized. Because Immanuel Kant believed that you can have no knowledge of God. Yes, according to him, reason cannot know beyond phenomena, beyond the day-to-day experience, is no longer the domain of reason. So since it is beyond the domain of reason, it is therefore beyond knowledge. So therefore reason cannot affirm the existence of God. But for Kant, God is taken as a postulate. That means to say, like, for practical purposes, you assume the existence of God. Like currency, isn't it? There's nothing that backs it. But for practical purposes, you assume a value. And then you let it run. Begitu. So for Kant, yes, as a matter of philosophy, as a matter of metaphysics, that means to say, as a matter of reality and truth, there is no God. But as a matter of principle of ethics, you can affirm the existence of God. You can even affirm the existence of an afterlife, whatever you like, so long as you become moral. So long as you obey his anthropolatry. Yes, anthropolatry, that means to say, mendewakan diri lah. So long as you worship the God of his making, of his own whims, you can assume the existence of God. Likewise, you have Auguste Comte, yes, the sociologist, who believed that that society was developing from one stage to another stage to another stage. In its final stage, he tried to develop sociologism as a religion. Yes, in this case, it is a sociolatry. That means to say worship of society. Whatever society says is sacrosanct. It is sacred. It is a religion in that sense. Yes, obeying whatever the society demands. So these are some of the ways in which the term religion has become corrupted in the West. And in its more vulgar forms, they say of religion, for example, to describe even their ways of life, their social activities. Football is like a way of life for them. Football is their religion, so on and so forth. So this term religion, in fact, is threatened with uselessness. It becomes a construct that is no longer serving any real purpose. As far as the British philosophy is concerned, you have somebody by the name of, I think, Don Cupid, if I'm not mistaken. He was speaking about an anti-realist God. Yes, because there was a current in philosophy of science about anti-realism, the idea that the things that the scientists assume to be existing may not in fact exist, but it helps explain phenomena, so they assume its existence. So an anti-realist God is the God that doesn't exist, but you assume his existence for social purposes. That's how the term religion has been bastardized in the West. It's been vulgarized, begitu. And even when Prof. Al-Attas is writing in the Malay language, faham agama dan asas akhlak, he's very clear to say that faham agama seperti mana yang kita fahami sebagai ad-din itu berbeza dengan faham agama, yakni religion as the West understands it. But yet, because he is in effect trying to Islamize the English language that we are using, now he gives the proper meaning of this term religion, but he pegs it to how it was understood by our scholars. Seperti mana ia tersimpan dan terhimpun dalam khazanah pemikiran dan tradisi keilmuan Islam, as it is preserved in the intellectual, religious and spiritual tradition of Islam. So he returned it to that use. So therefore, in that use, as we said last time, although there are many meanings, this term deen can be understood even in terms of the secular day-to-day relations. It is, as Prof. Al-Attas was saying, reducible to 4 primary significations. And we have explored the meanings. Yes, one of them was the state of being indebted. Yes, keadaan berhutang. And then the second one was submission. The third one was judicious power. Judicious power, that means to say, kuasa memberi hukum. The act of, shall we say, giving judgment, of acting within judgment, yes, judicious power. And then fourthly, it is natural inclination, yani fitrah. We explain also the relations in a secular setting about how from the term indebtedness, you arrive at the condition of that there must be an advanced city. And within this advanced city, there are rules and regulations that people obey. And then furthermore, we said that of this, there needs to be a dayan, yes, an enforcer of the law within that place. And then there is, from the state of that, you have conviction, you have that which is idana, you have debt, yes, dainuna, you have many other words that develop. And one of the other things that we explored was on the relationship between deen and Madinah, how out of that you can derive from that the term Madinah, which is a city. And from Madinah you get Maddana, that means to say to civilize, to humanize, to refine. And from that you get Tamaddun. And then we explained the essential difference between the term Madinah and the term civitas in the Latin language. Yes, because in the Latin, in the Roman West, they understand by city to refer to a geographic location. That means to say a kind of living that has been elevated to a certain stage above that of the village, above that of, shall we say, towns. Yes. So by the time it reaches a certain stage, it becomes a civilization, because in a city it is already complex. However, in Islam, the term Madinah, just as the term Maskanah, yes, a place where you reside, the term Madinah refers to a group of people who agree to obey a certain way of life. So therefore, it is referred to a kind of living. So it is not restricted in that sense to the kind of external conditions. So that is how we can understand that the golden age of Islam is the time of the Prophet ﷺ. That's how we understood that ultimately why there was a change between Yathrib until it becomes Madinah is because there is by now a new state of elevation, a new state of civilization. People's adab has been refined, and they submit to the governance of the Dayan of that city, which was none other than the Prophet, and the Prophet was governing the city under the guidance of revelation. So therefore, that means to say ultimately the Dayan is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is how we get to the Lisanul Arab, in which Ibn Manzur wrote there that the meaning of deen, he begins with the deliberation on the meaning of Dayan, ruler. Yes. And then he quotes a hadith. Of course, Dayan he refers ultimately in reality to Allah, because he Dayan bima'na al-Hakim, the one who gives law to the universe. But he says, Inna Dayan hadhihi al-ummah, that the governor of the city after its prophet was Sayyidina Ali. Yes, in order for us to understand that religion is not just a matter of something vague that binds one person and another, but it involves discipline, it involves training, it involves supervision of the higher self against the lower self. It involves a kind of living that spans your entire ethical life. It involves the usage of your intellect. It involves intelligence. It involves the suppression of your nafsul haywaniyah with your nafsul natiqah. It involves an understanding of your reality. So there's many things involved in this term religion. So it is not just a ritual. Yes? So it cannot be reduced to just ritual. It cannot be reduced to just some teachings that involve rituals. But it involves understanding of the vista of the universe, the intimate relationship between man and God, the understanding of man unto himself. Man arafa nafsah faqad arafa rabbah. Yes, he who knows himself knows Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So to proceed, the source of religion, according to Professor Naqib Al-Attas in that chapter on the concept of religion, he said pertains to the covenant of the Alastu bi Rabbikum. That's why ittakhadha rabbuka min bani Adam, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala drew forth from the loins of Adam his progeny, and then he made them witness, yes, wa ashhadahum ala anfusihim, yes, upon themselves, Alastu bi Rabbikum, in which he said, am I not your Lord? And then they answered, qalu bala shahidna. Then they said, yes, after the tajalli of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in which he revealed himself unto them, because they can now recognize him, he asked them, am I not your Lord? From one thing that we derive from this is that we were conscious, we were intelligent in that sense, because we understood the question, and there in the understanding of the question it binds us to a covenant, because the question says, am I not your Lord? That means to say we recognize that he is our Lord, and as Lord he is the creator, provider, cherisher, sustainer, and we are the ones being indebted in this case. Yes, therein begin the realization of our indebtedness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, as he has decreed, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed, when we come into this world, yes, sumiyal insanu insanan, man is named insan because he promised, he covenanted, thumma nasiya, and then he forgot. We forget. But just because we forgot doesn't mean that our promises were not binding. But the binding of the promise, at least according to the Ash'ari school, depends on the renewal of revelation. That means to say, depends upon coming into contact with prophets. According to the Maturidi, it depends on, you are at least supposed to understand that there is a God. But nothing beyond that, isn't it? Because with your akal, without the aid of revelation, perhaps that's as far as you can get. And that too depends on guidance, because how many people are not led to the realization that there is a God? What more the realization that you need to submit to this God, or how it is to be performed, what is his name, what is the way unto him. This one requires revelation. So that's the Ash'ari position, is that the renewal of the covenant is dependent upon coming into contact with revelation, and the contact with revelation is supposed to remind you of that covenant, and that reminder is meant to be like a sort of recognition, because you were cognizing that in the past, you are to recognize again the centrality of that covenant. So in this world also we understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us existence, and the consciousness of the indebtedness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is what binds us in this covenant of deen in this world. And again, Prophet Al-Attas said there that the words as it was used, yes, to signify the relationship between man and man, still maintain its initial meanings, but it undergoes a profound intensification when it is used to reflect the relationship between mankind and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the nature of the debt is much more serious when it comes to man and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because between one human being and another, you may owe him your life, you may owe him certain good favors, but nothing like existence can be granted by another human being, by a human being to another. And then I think briefly before we finish, the last time, we also spoke about the ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I think we explored a bit about the analogy of trying to get to know someone, and from there to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the things that I think I may have missed the last time was about how the words contain contrariness. Like the word deen may mean, on the one hand, to abase oneself, to submit, and on the other hand, it means to becoming mighty, becoming powerful. And this contrariness does not reflect a certain contradiction in the concept, but rather it reflects the nature and reality of man. Because man is, on the one hand, he is the nafsul natiqah. That means to say the intelligent soul, intelligent spirit. On the other hand, he is the nafsul haywaniyah. According to the intellectual tradition, according to what Professor Al-Attas has written, man is a single being, but composed of two aspects. One aspect, the nafsul natiqah, is the spiritual aspect, and to this is referred the terms akal, qalb, ruh, yes, wa nafs. Of course, when it comes to the nafs, it is also involved in the governance of the body, and when it is involved in the governance of the body, ensue also properties such as shahwah, the desire, and as well as anger, ghadab. And justice in the self is where the nafsul natiqah, the intelligent soul, is to rule and to guide and to discipline the lower self. And aslama, to submit in this case, is the lower self ought to submit to the higher self. Now, to contrast this, say, for example, with the ideas of how the Western philosophers thought, when it came to Plato, he said that reason is the property of thinking in man. But yet, at the same time, he conflates the meaning of reason with desire. That means to say that reason, which is a thinking principle, is also desiring the good. But yet, he has another aspect which he calls desires, whose purpose is to satisfy itself. When the later thinkers amongst the Western people looked at this idea, they criticized Plato. And I think the one who's most thorough would be David Hume. David Hume said, in reality, reason as a thinking principle in man does not have desires. It is merely an act of arrangement and systematization. In reality, reason is a slave of the passions. It is the passions that run man. Except that there are passions which are self-induced, and there are passions which you get as a result of habituation in society, that which is external to you. And morality is something like that also, in that sense. Morality is also, he develops this emotive, what prefigures would later as emotivism in ethics, the idea of the passion theory. But out of this slavery of reason thesis, yes, slave to the passions thesis, grew another thesis about how, in a political setting, sensible knavery is the most, shall we say, advantageous position. Sensible knavery. That means to say, to become a very calculative evil person. That means to say, to indulge in evil only insofar as it doesn't lead you to harm. This is in reality a further development of the thesis of the sophists during the time of Plato. Because if you remember in the Republic of Plato, which I shared the last time, Glaucon, one of the young people there, demanded Socrates in that dialogue. He said, tell me the truth, is there such a thing as morality, or is morality merely a game of let's pretend? Yes, that means to say, as if to say that people are only moral because morality brings about good benefits, isn't it? If society thinks of you as a good person, they will give you honor and fame. Yes, they will give you certain honorific titles. But if they know you to be a crook, then you will be denigrated. So Glaucon said, if morality is a game of let's pretend, isn't it better to pretend to be good rather than to actually be good and be thought of as bad? And then further, this is what is called the Glaucon's challenge. Yes, further, don't people are people not are people only good? Aren't people only good because they have no ability to be bad? That means to say, if they have power, they would be bad. But since they don't have power, so they submit to the governance of the powerful. And in order to prove his thesis, just look at the powerful people, isn't it? The more power they have, the more tyrannical they become. Of course, Socrates or Plato tries to give this, long-winded answer, which we know doesn't stand the light of criticism. He said that there is an analogy between the soul and the city. Yes, the city which is at peace is equivalent to the soul which is at peace. But you can attack the analogy, isn't it? You can say, why should there be a relationship between a just and harmonious city and a just and harmonious soul? I can teach myself to, to habituate it in the ways of the bad. That is because in reality, as even in the Republic, you will see that the Greeks do not have the kibritul ahmar. They don't have the red sulfur. They don't have that secret type of knowledge which, once it is imbibed by the soul, changes the quality of the soul. They don't have it. That's why they are still making guesswork about it. But it is clear in our intellectual tradition, as Imam Al-Ghazali was saying, for example, in the Jawahirul Quran, he was saying that there is a kind of knowledge which is interspersed in the verses of the Quran. Yes, according to Imam Al-Ghazali, he likens the Quran to be like an ocean of jewels of various grades. Amongst these, the highest grade is what he calls the kibritul ahmar, the red sulfur. The red sulfur, in terms of its alchemical properties, is such that once base metals comes into contact with it, it becomes gold. And according to Imam Al-Ghazali, this kind of verses, these gems are the ilmu tawheed, the verses on tawheed, of which there are 3 grades according to him. The highest in grade is the one that talks about the that of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which are the rarest of all gems in the Quran. And then secondly is the one that talks about the sifah and asma of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the names. These are found in various verses, and they are ranked very highly. Like, for example, Ayatul Kursi, like the verse we read just now, Law Anzalna, like the beginning of Suratul An'am, the first 50 verses, like the end of Suratul Hashar, which we read. These verses contain the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And thirdly, the af'al, the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, more numerous. Nevertheless, 1, 2, 3 of these verses, if human souls come into contact with them and they imbibe it, they become transformed. They become able to do away with the world. They become able to resist their nafs. They become able to recognize that they are not their nafs. They are elevated from the station of the nafsul ammara to that of the, at least, lawama. When they know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when they know themselves, when they know who their God is, who their Lord is, Allah is the one that liberates them from being confined to the lower self. But if they forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah says, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهِ. Do not be like those who forget Allah. فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them forget who their very selves are. These things is not available in the intellectual tradition of the West. That's why Prophet Al-Attas, in describing the Western people, he says, مَثَلُهُمْ كَمَثَلِ الَّذِي اسْتَوْقَدَ نَارًا. These are the group of people who are like those who are kindling a fire. فَلَمَّا أَضَاءَتْ مَا حَوْلَهُ ذَهَبَ اللَّهُ بِنُورِهِمْ. There will be sparks such that people, from the perspective of a revealed religion, from the perspective of a living intellectual tradition, if we look at them, there will be sparks of truth here, sparks of truth there. فَلَمَّا أَضَاءَتْ مَا حَوْلَهُ. When it becomes almost clear to them, ذَهَبَ اللَّهُ بِنُورِهِمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes that light. ذَهَبَ اللَّهُ بِنُورِهِمْ وَتَرَكَهُمْ فِي ظُلُمَاتٍ. And Allah leaves them in darkness, لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. And they will not be able to see between truth and falsehood. أَوْ كَصَيِّبٍ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ. Or like a dark laden cloud in the sky. That's the condition of the Western tradition. So you see from in the beginning, Plato had certain things, but he was missing certain things. Aristotle had certain things, but he was missing another thing. And then the Hellenistic philosophers like that, they had certain things and they missed certain things. Even despite the infusion, or in spite of the infusion of the ideas coming from Judaism and Christianity, they had certain things, but they missed certain things. And then they had another chance when they came into contact with our tradition, with Islam, via Al-Kindi, Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, Imam Al-Ghazali. When they came into contact with our scholars, with our scholarly tradition, when they came into contact with Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, with Ibn Rushd, and all our thinking and ideas came to influence the West, even then, when they had that opportunity, they recasted it. Yeah? They ubah bentuknya so as to fit the Western crucible, so as to fit the Western mold. Despite being infused with the rational and scientific spirit, they rejected the most precious of what is in our tradition, which is the ilm al-tawhid. That's why, for example, when Allama Iqbal was studying the West, he said that actually the European tradition is a further development of the Islamic tradition, because the Islamic, the rational and the scientific spirit came from Islam. But a very crucial element which is missing in Iqbal's reading of history is what Prof. Al-Attas provided, which is, despite it being a further development, or rather despite them receiving the infusion of the rational and scientific spirit from Islam, i.e. from the reading of our scholars and scientists, they recasted it. They removed the elements which were important, which were of prime importance, they removed. They paid no attention to the afterlife, because there is already a love of this world. They cannot remove it. And that's why Prof. Al-Attas was saying, religion in the sense we mean here, yeah, in the four primary significations, in the sense of lifelong submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way that earns his contentment, his rida, this has never taken root in the Western tradition. And when he said this, Majid Fakhri, I think, the historian of Islamic philosophy, he wrote about Prof. Al-Attas, said, how can he make such a general statement? And he said, Prof. Al-Attas, this statement cannot be backed. Well, you will say that in the beginning, but the more you read into the tradition, the more it becomes confirmed. You see here and there, the general current, yes, gradually it left behind the study of religion, the study of this world, the study of Tawheed, and so on. Because there's too many problems, as if we do a more careful reading in Islam and secularism, we'll be able to see it. Sorry to be speaking like a harangue like this here and there, left and right, because I'm not sure, with the various groups coming like this, whether to start again or to continue where we left off, because from some of the faces you look like you're understanding. So that's why I just continue. Well, it's already 10:30. Maybe we can start with a round of maybe comments or questions, so that we can see where we want to go from there. Yeah, that religion in the sense we mean as ad-din never took root in Western culture and civilization. Yeah, Majid Fakhri disagreed with that statement, because he thought they must, because well, a student of Western culture would say, what about the monastic orders? What about the the Benedictine monks, those who lived in the in poverty? Those people surely must have been earnest in their surrender to God. The Quran also said that, warahbaniyatan ibtada'uha. But then Allah adds also, walam ra'awha haqqa ri'ayatiha. They began this monastic celibate way. That is also an extreme sort of thing. Yeah? They began with the thinking that they're doing that for the sake of God. But in reality, because they did not possess the proper example, isn't it? I.e., unlike in the Muslim, we have the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, which is elaborate, which is detailed, which is reported via the lines of tawatur, which had the Prophet Muhammad marrying, having children, having grandchildren, which had the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a state, as a leader of state, and so various roles was played by this final prophet. But they don't have the same example in the case of Nabi Allah Isa alayhi salam, because a lot of the reports were challenged to the extent that even the way of prayer is not known. They had to invent it. Creedal positions had to be reinvented. There is no Sharia. In fact, there is the uplifting of the Sharia. So how can they say that the religion has taken root? How can they say that they submit to God? Perhaps with individual exceptions, because even our scholars, Prof. Al-Attas said that until today they may be earnest Christians, for example, who don't believe in the official position of the church, for example. They believe in the oneness of God. And then they did as they were spiritually led to do. But these are exceptions. And you cannot use exceptions to challenge the rule. And the rule was that religion, as in the sense we mean, has never taken root. Because you have to look at the major currents of the West. You have to look at the popes. You have to look at the Catholic Church. You have to look at the clerics and the clergy and the mess that they made themselves fall into. Yes, the Counter-Reformation, the fight against the scientists. All these things has to be taken into consideration. That's why Prof. Al-Attas is making that. He's not making an empty statement like that. It is after a long period of observation. Yes, any other question? It doesn't have to be like a complex sort of question. It can be something very simple. You can just share if you don't have a question. Yeah, hold on. Well, one of the things that our scholars say, you cannot give what you don't have. So first, Islam has to be a living reality for you. You need to have certainty, as Prof. Al-Attas was saying. It has to be a living faith. You need to read the history of the Malays in this part of the world. You need to imbibe the spirit of mission. Because of all the religions in the world, only Islam is the universal religion because it possesses this spirit of understanding, the reality of the akhirah, the understanding of the importance of your life in this world for the sake of akhirah. So if you are set ablaze by this mission, that means to say it will be visible, it will catch on, it will be what you call, it is contagious, that spirit. That means to say if you karam lah, if you istighraq, if you plumb yourself in dhikrullah, in the seeking of knowledge, there will be traces, there will be athar of that, because you will be reading books, you'll be talking, you will be asking questions, you'll be doing things, and that thing will catch on. Yes, and then it will lead to there needs to be culture of knowledge. That's what Professor Wan wrote in Budaya Ilmu, like that. Then it will change, because in reality, nobody is imposing limits except for the limits that you set yourself. Of course, the colonials and the other powers, they have done their level best to impose certain restrictions. But in reality, these restrictions are not physical. They are intellectual. They are conceptual. These things are the ones that needs to be broken. And this is why, it's so liberating to read works like this. Because even in the author's preface, you read there in the first sentence, yes, the conception and the conceptualization of knowledge and the sciences, as well as the adaptation of methods and theories, are in each civilization formulated within the framework of its own metaphysical system, forming its worldview. That's a very powerful statement. To understand that Islam as a civilization has its own methods, has its own metaphysical system. You need to, of course, the path towards this is not the same for everyone. For some people, maybe metaphysics is not their way forward. But either ways, they need to take seriously the tamthil that Prof. Al-Attas was giving about Majnun and Laila. I think Islam dalam sejarah dan kebudayaan Melayu, that he narrates this story instead of Laila, isn't it? Because Laila was crazy in love with Majnun. Jadi until the chieftain asked to be able to see this Majnun, why was she so crazy with him? And then after some search, they found out, they found this man, they captured him, put before the chieftain. He was a mangy, smelly guy, dirty. And so it came to his surprise. The chieftain is like, how can you love this man? This is not what we expect, that you would fall head over heels for this kind of a person. Laila said, because you see in him the physical aspect, but I see him as the one who wrote those beautiful lines of poetry, the spirit. Jadi like that. The world now, people think very badly about Islam, very badly about their history, very badly about their ancestors. In fact, they have tried to brainwash you into thinking that your ancestors have done nothing, or rather they are the reason that you're being held back, and the only reason that the only way for you to push forward is to forget who you were and just march as they tell you to march. Yes, but you need to be like Laila in this case. You need to be able to see through and see the spirit of Islam and fall in love with it. And once you fall in love with it, you will reappropriate it and it will become something else. That's the thing that I hope will catch on, isn't it? Because in gatherings like this, and with my limited knowledge, with my limited abilities, there are many people who are doing better work than me. You have people in Singapore who have done reading better than I can read. But I come because this is in the spirit of the Quran, where Allah says, "Waja'a min aqsal madinati rajulu yas'a." Yes? If a foreigner comes, or if somebody from the end of the city were to come and to warn you, you will listen and think of it as a serious matter. But if somebody locally does it weekly, you will say, next week I go, until 5 years, But if someone, coming down from KL, begitu, and then, you hear the talk of town, somebody is coming to talk to you about something you already know. But then that, because of this, the spirit of brotherhood, this ukhuwah, you appreciate it. You listen, isn't it? In reality, it is these gatherings are designed for that. These gatherings are a means for self-introspection, for the muhasabah of this ummah. This ummah needs muhasabah now. And how lucky are we, to see so many youthful faces. All of you are still young. Is there anyone more than 45? Are you 45? More than 45? Are you 40? Huh? Not even near 40. You can still shape the world, And look at this, so many, even Sukarno said if he had 10 guys, he can shake the world. We have more than 10 guys now. Yes. And Imam Haddad was saying, you can achieve greatness if you're still under 35. I'm sorry if there's anyone 36. No, 36. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. That means to say, if you find that these statements, appeal to you, that is because your very soul is useful for that. As your very soul has been ditempa, has been designed for something like that. Durable souls itu. That means to say Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala, in order to entrust His message upon a person, must test the person. So if you find your soul memang inclined toward this, kullun muyassarin lima khuliqalah. Everyone, according to Imam Al-Ghazali, will be made ease as to what he's created for. If you find yourself listening to these things tonight, and you find yourself here, إذا تريد أن تعرف مقامك انظر أين أقامك. If you want to know your station with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look at where He has gathered you. It's a Saturday night, you know. What do other people, what do other young Singaporeans do in Saturday night? Not here, I mean, they don't gather for knowledge, isn't it? The fact that He has chosen you here out of His munificence, out of His generosity, means He has a special mission for you, if you so choose to listen to it. Oh, Allahu Akbar. And if you answer His call, yes, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ. Who has a better speech than those who call unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This will be a different generation, isn't it? Ours will be a different generation, because we have many years, inshallah, to change. But it will not change without serious study, serious reflections. It will not change without sacrifice. It will not change if you don't allow it to change. Yes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen you with tawfiq, with His inayah. And inshallah He will protect you for the next few years, so as to perform this amar, so as to perform this command. And this command is the simple command that has been repeated over the years. Atlubul ilm. Talabatul ilm. Yes. Seek knowledge. Who's preventing you from seeking knowledge? As Prof. Al-Attas was saying in that video, kan? What about the role of women? Is there anywhere that says that they shouldn't seek knowledge? And then he said, then they should seek knowledge. Allahu Akbar. He said that about women. Sepatutnya ni tamparan kepada rijal, isn't it? Where is your rujulah if you don't have knowledge, if you don't have ilm? As Imam Muhammad Al-Baqir was saying to his son Ja'far Sadiq, he said that knowledge is beautiful, but if you wear it, it's even more beautiful. Yes. And then he says, ignorance is ugly. If you wear it, it's going to be even more ugly. Allahu Akbar. You are children of great people. You are descendants of great people. You know, your ancestors were part of something really momentous. That means you were there also, because at that point you were in their sulbi, kan? You were witness to a great mission in this part of the world. Use this opportunity, yes? Because I cannot come here often, but you are here amongst yourselves. You can organize yourself, you can read works, you can discuss. And who's to say that you cannot read great works? Even if they prescribe to you works of a lowly nature in your system, in your own time you can read the great works. In your own time you can hang with Imam Al-Ghazali, you can hang with Sheikh Abdul Samad Palembang, you can read the works of Professor Naqib Al-Attas. Just look at tonight. I mean, Professor Naqib Al-Attas writes advanced stuff. It doesn't mean you cannot understand it. It requires ijtihad on your part. Sorry for the preaching. You have questions? Yes. expanding a bit on that, Charles Taylor, he wrote this very big tome called A Secular Age. His thesis there is that why he calls this age the secular age was because only about 500 years ago, and he uses the European Western experience, he said it was inconceivable. Yes, he said it was inconceivable during that time to imagine living without a God or without submitting to religion. But what has happened over the past 500 years, which led to this the secular age that we live in, which he calls the supernova effect, something happened in history too. He said is such that in our age, even for the staunchest believer, according to his own admission, even for the staunchest believer, the religious life that's a matter of fact for Islam. But for them, wow, a statement like this, by Charles Taylor, it becomes like a cause célèbre. Now, in relation to what you are saying, for them, I have a feeling that, for Harvey Cox, for all these people, this new way of being must have been, imbibed by them from coming into contact with Islam. Because, for example, even with regards to representative democracy, yes, democracy as we know it today is closer to how the Muslims practice it compared to the classical period of the Greece. Similarly, modernity, at least in some of its fundamental elements, as Prof. Al-Attas identified, for example, the respect for the dignity of man, rationality, internationalism, the idea of transcending ethnic identity, a universal sort of identity. Ultimately, these are principles which are part and parcel of the Islamic civilization. A universal religion with a universal God, this is part and parcel. But because they have recasted the things that they got from itu, jadi there are problems here and there. So when they say about when they say about the secular age, that now they consider that when they say one of the things that the reinterpretation of religion to refer to an urban, to a way of living and so on, well, this means already that they have been indebted to the Muslims, except that they redefine it to fulfill and to fit according to how they understand life, because for them they projected into the Bible their present views, this radicalism. And just now I was contemplating, for example, there was one statement by Ibn Rushd about, in the Faslul Maqal, if I'm not mistaken, yes, but don't take my word on it, because I read it from Etienne Gilson. But he said there that because as a chief Qadi, he was a Maliki. In terms of fiqh, he said that he accepts the Quran, the Hadith, Ijma' and Qiyas. And since he accepts all these as sources, so therefore there is no requirement for philosophy. But when it comes to philosophy, that means to say metaphysics, reality and truth, he said that there has not been an ijma' of the scholars. So therefore, you need to use philosophy. And when you need to use philosophy, where reason in its findings contradict the finding of the revelation, revelation needs to be reinterpreted according to the law of reason. I cannot help but to find that in reality, this is the source that led to the secularization of the West when they apply it to their theology. Because Latin Averroism is the cause of Western secularization. Latin Averroism is much more radical than Ibn Rushd in the Muslim world. Because Ibn Rushd in the Muslim world, he was taking that position as a matter of ijtihad in that sense. Because according to him, he read that there was no ijma' when it comes to theology. In reality, there was an ijma'. And that is what the Ash'aris and the Maturidis have held, and that is what Imam Al-Ghazali have held. In reality, what is the ijma' pertaining to the mutashabih? The ijma' pertaining to the mutashabih has to be returned to the interpretation of the Salaf. When the Salaf said, for example, about al-istiwa' ma'lum, yes, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's resting on the throne is known. Wa kayfiyatuhu majhul. How it is done is not known. Wa su'al anhu bid'ah. The fact that it can be said that su'al anhu bid'ah, that means to say there was already an ijma'. Because they recognize that this was a new innovation. So the Kalamic school, that means to say there was pertaining to the verse yang ayat muhkamat tu, the verses which are established and clear, and the verses which are ambiguous, they did interpret in that manner. So the bid'ah that was introduced here, the innovation that was introduced here, is the innovation that reason is somehow superior to the apparent verses. And once that is taken into the West, it gave them the arguments that they needed to respond against the church, and what they call a revolution in epistemology happened, a revolution in society happened, in all levels, until the rule of the church was removed altogether. And then gradually from there, since they were found wanting in their report, and they were found wanting in their method to understand their religion, as a consolation, they introduced hermeneutics. Yeah, hermeneutics as a method of interpretation. They developed this, interpretation based on context, based on intention, and so on, liberating the author from the text, they say. And because they got a lot of, they managed to justify their anthropolatry and then their sociolatry, that means to say worship of society and worship of their nafs, through that, and that method gave them a lot of the things that they wanted. Our scholars belajar, our scholars among the modernists studied with them, and they want to introduce this. And they say we should reinterpret the Quran. But why? Yes. Wow. How do you understand that? Yeah, but that's your interpretation of the hadith, isn't it? Because it could mean when you say one of the, assuming, because I don't know the status of the hadith, supposing it is a hadith, when you say that one of the interpreters of the Quran will be time, it could mean, it doesn't have to mean that as time develops you have to reinterpret the Quran. It could rather mean that time will validate the statements of the Quran also. That means to say, in the past they did not know what certain thing means, and then as a result, in the future, with certain things that people have discovered, then they come to know the meaning. Then time becomes here the interpreter. Like for example, what Professor Al-Attas have done with the tafsir of the verse of the special creation of man. Yes, as he said, in the big tafsir, they did not interpret, for example, the special creation of Adam in the way that Prof. Al-Attas did. For example, in which he distinguished between the different verbs of creation. Khalaqa lain, ja'ala lain, ansha'a lain. Yes? Ansha'a, for example, is a kind of creation, a species of creation that changes one form to be elevated into a higher form. فَأَنْشَأْنَاهُ خَلْقًا آخَرَ. With regards to the creation of man. Yes, فَخَلَقْنَا الْإِظَامَ مُدْغَةً. When Allah said He was creating in the stages of creation of man, from womb and so on. And then after a certain stage, Allah uses a different verb. فَأَنْشَأْنَاهُ خَلْقًا آخَرَ. And then we made out of it a different creation. That is the point in which he becomes elevated, because he's now no longer what was before. It is a leap in the special creation, the infusion of the spirit. There truly it can be said that, but the significance of this verse might not be understood by the earlier scholars, because there was no challenge that challenged the special creation of man. Everyone believed that man was different from the animals. But now that they have introduced the theory of evolution and understood man to be a mere development of the animal species, a scholar amongst the Muslims need to respond to this challenge and need to explain these verses. But the explanation of this verse is based on the internal rules of tafsir and the internal rules of ta'wil, and taking into consideration the scholars and the ijma' of the people in the past. That's when time becomes the interpreter. However, if somebody else decides to change the ruling on something because the society disagrees with it, that's not time, that's nafs, isn't it? Yes, because everyone has understood what is haram, what is halal. Suddenly you want to change the ruling because you say the times have changed. Now that's following nafs. Did you want to add anything? Oh, yes. Yes. Ah. of the things that I think, because Brother Hassan mentioned this, notion of individuality as one of the cornerstones of modern Western living, because of the 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 key differences in our worldview. When they mention individuality, they mean man as a whole as they understood it, not the way we understand it, as possessing ruh and intellect. So therefore, when they say individuality, in fact, it will lead that man to suffer depression if he is being protected. That's one of the crises that is now suffered, in the past, say 150, 200 years, after, let's just say, after Immanuel Kant just now, they all wanted to say that Western people have reached the pinnacle of development, until one scholar says it has not. For example, Hegel thought that during his time it has reached culmination. The change of the absolute has reached culmination during his time, and then after that, there was Feuerbach, and after Feuerbach there was Marx. But Karl Marx said, it shouldn't end the way you conceived it. Rather, it should end in a classless society. So democracy, because liberal democracy is the one that fully satisfies the individual demands. That means to say he cannot conceive of a society that will satisfy what a human being wants more than the liberal democracy. But Allah decides to extend his age to the extent that he got to see the dissolution of his own idea. Yes, I think just a few weeks ago he published this Identity Politics. The idea that in reality, even liberal democracies cannot fulfill the wants and needs of mankind, because within liberal democracy now there is this crisis, yes, in which people are looking for the identity which they are yet to find. So therefore, in our time, more than class and economic struggles, so we have transcended this the Marxist war of the proletariat against the bourgeoisie. They have been put in the museums of history. So don't waste your time trying to be Marxist in our time. Yes, if you follow the argument properly, don't waste your time with the Marxists. But now this Fukuyama, he has something. He's saying that again he harkens back in his theory back to Plato. Yes, because he said that what the scholars before him has noticed, or has noticed of human psychology that seeks fulfillment, was the desirous appetite. The desirous appetite is the cause of economic differences in society. So therefore, Marx, for example, is a reductionism, because he reduced man to just that material desires. So justice will be achieved when there is equality. But now there is, in general, an upward rise in material possession, to such an extent that even for the disenfranchised, there is at least the dream of the possibility of making wealth. Yes, everyone has this the dream of upward social mobility, and that therefore will satisfy the desirous aspect. But there is one aspect that is not satisfied, according to Fukuyama, which they have overlooked, and that is the thumos aspect, the spirited aspect, the faculty of self-evaluation, the dog element in man, the element in man that wants to be honored. Of course, in the past, in hierarchical societies, in class societies that wants to persist and remain as class societies, this is represented by individuals who suffer from megalothumos. That means to say an excess of the desiring to be respected. Yes, these are the ones that want to maintain and hold on to power so that they can continue to be worshipped. There is, however, in our time, as Fukuyama pointed out, one thing to be recognized also, but not to the degree of excess. This is the ones that are characteristic of the individual groups, yes, the LGBT, all these things. And why have our scholars not been able to respond properly to them because they fall into this trap. Yes, because they thought that what the LGBT people wanted was a hukum. They know the hukum already. Yes, that's not what they wanted. They don't want to be told that they suffer from a mental illness. They don't want to be told that they are of the Qawmi Lut. That's not what is needed to transcend the discussion. Yes, the real problem lies beyond that. The real problem is a problem of makna diri. Yes, they suffer from a loss of identity of who their real self is. So therefore, they identify themselves with the LGBT community. If they know who they are, why should they want to identify themselves with their sexuality? Yes, do we identify ourselves with, for example, your preferences? We don't, isn't it? Do we say that I'm a gym member and I want the gym members to be represented in the society? Gym members are being persecuted. We don't say that, isn't it? I ride a motorbike and I want the bikers to be recognized. I will fight and ensure that the bikers get their own toilets, and so on and so forth. It doesn't make sense. Because why? These are not identity markers. In reality, what is missing is their own sense of identity. As a result, they cling on to this as an identity marker because it brings about emotions. Because there is the myth and tale of persecution that is a self-fulfilling sort of myth and understanding. They shape themselves around it. And then with social media, it becomes worse because they can develop this myth of being persecuted. The same is with the feminists, those who say that, there is this constant policy of men speak and so on and so forth. The disenfranchised, the racist. Even Muslims are suffering this because they have reduced Islam to a political category. So they also want to join in with these groups and demand their political reality. Yes. Well, we have to. I don't know. No, I don't know in the sense that if it will be effective, because if it's too, if they have written their life story around that and they don't want to listen, then cannot be done. Nothing can be done. But it is to understand that the real crisis of identity has an answer, kan? The source of our identity is in the person of the Prophet Muhammad. Because yes, isn't it? First you have to, because idza ja'al haq zahuqal batil. When reality emerges, that which is falsehood will disappear. If the yes, wa ma kunna nu'adzibuhum wa anta fihim, and uh, we will not punish them for as long as you remain with them. Wa'lamu anna fikum Rasulullah, and know that amongst you is the Prophet. These verses refer to the fact that if the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad is held on directly by the Muslims, catastrophe will be averted in the society. So, but this sunnah cannot be a reductionist form of sunnah. Just because you put on the kofiyah, pakai shawl, pakai apa semua betul, that doesn't mean that you have lived the sunnah. The reality of the sunnah itu. So, in reality, I think this crisis of identity that is suffered by the Muslim Ummah ini is an epiphenomenon. You know epiphenomenon? Like there is a tree, then there is a lake. The reflection of the tree in the lake is the epiphenomenon. The phenomena is the tree. The epi itu maksudnya it follows after the phenomena. It doesn't have a reality to it. If you put a rock, it doesn't destroy the tree. But if you remove the tree, the reflection will lose. What is the solution? The solution is the Shama'il Muhammadiyah. If the Shama'il Muhammadiyah, that means to say if the perfections of the Prophet, the prophetic character is existing in the society, those who suffer from identity crisis will lose that crisis and will lose that problem. Of course, the Shama'il of the Prophet must be understood in its priorities. Yes, that means to say you need to understand the Prophet the way Qadi Iyad presents him, for example, in the Shifa. You need to understand the Prophet Muhammad in the sense of his worldview, his knowledge, his character. Yes, not just the outward aspects, but the inward aspects also. The certainty, the rahmah, all these things. For as long as these people exist, society is safe. Yes, is to become who you need to become. So that's why Prof. Al-Attas is not too concerned with debating the secularists, debating all these people. He just focuses on the Muslims. And that's why when even in discussing the internal dilemma of the Muslims, he identifies what are these groups that he's attacking and what aspect of these groups that he is attacking. He's attacking the people that are preventing us from accessing the right knowledge. Those who reduce Islam to legalism, those who reduce Islam to a political discussion, to slogans, those who reduce the energies of the Muslims to pursue only stately matters until they forget the matter of pressing fardu ain. Those who externalize Islam but not understanding the essence. And basically he attacks it at the level of metaphysics, of your reality, of your theory of reality and truth, of your conception of knowledge, these things. Because and this is also taking into consideration the fiqh tahawulat, although he doesn't use the term, Prof. Al-Attas, but he knows, as an alim in this time, as somebody who practices his knowledge, he knows about the hadith of the Prophet, in which it is said that there will be a point in time where things will be removed from the religion one by one. Amongst the first things that will go is stately power, until the last thing that goes away is salah. Salah there doesn't just mean the exteriorization of the aspects of salah. That means to say the communication with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the sense of what salah is meant to achieve. So once he notice, if he lives in the century that you have lost to the Ottomans, the Malay Kesultanan Melayu hilang kuasanya gini, at that time you hold on to your salah, kan? And what is the foundation of the salah? That one you hold on, because he was saying that he wants to give us the preparation so that we can weather with discernment, yes, this secularization, the pestilential winds of secularization. It is an epidemic, yes, pestilential winds. It transfers itself through the means of language, concepts. Yes, the youth are especially susceptible to this. Yes, those who take their worldview chiefly from the internet, from the sources which are irresponsible. They are much more children of the internet than they are your children. Although they live in your house, although you feed them, but their minds. Yes. Yes. How old is the kid that you have in mind? No, I mean 15-year-old lah. Exactly. So that's why I'm asking for you to be more specific. Are you talking about early childhood, teenage? Yes. So I mean to say that it depends on when you have the kids. The younger you have them, the better. The more you can do. Yes. That means to say, if you have children, that means to say whose fitrah is still sound, that one more you can do. For that one, you can still apply the prophetic injunction. Teach them to love the Quran, Rasulullah, and his Ahlul Bayt. Because that thing will be part of their program. Maksudnya, before secular encroachments enter into their minds. Throw away the television if you can lah. If you cannot, tak apalah. Spend more time with them. Take them to see scholars. Children, you can do wonderful things until they are so until they become beautiful in character. Children, you can still do that, but the later the age, the more radical will your method have to be. I mean, the more creative will your method have to be. I think my friend Hassan is trying to develop the strategies at the university level and at the more serious education level. But you will need, in this time, supposing if systematic changes is not possible, at least on your part, in Malaysia, we're still struggling to get ISTAC, so that we can have a higher institution that serves as a fortress, out of which you can have smaller institution, that means to say it can go down and down and down and down until it covers all the itu. Supposing you cannot do that, then you aim for small victories that can be consolidated. Yes, aim for small victories that can be consolidated. That means to say, not a one-off sort of thing. You cannot have like a one-shot talk and so on. But you need to develop, one of the things I think which is very effective is a community of believers. That means to say a community of serious people, a community of people who use language properly. And who, you have to be patient. Teaching adab is not something that is, one time you correct, it's already done. It is consistent, like that. You have to use language properly. You have to correct. Not to say just correct errors and aberrations in amal. Correct errors and aberrations in language, in concepts. You need to correct when you see it. But in order to be able to develop the critical faculty, you first need to study properly until you will be able to see that there is a corruption of worldview in this statement, and then correct it. But that too requires a lot of patience. Just because you have read Prof. Al-Attas now, just because you have heard these things, let me tell you something. If you want to do justice to Prof. Al-Attas, keep your mouth shut from saying, from calling your opponent until loss of adab. Don't say that. Just because you know the meaning of loss of adab, never say to anyone you suffer from loss of adab. It will give a bad name to Professor Al-Attas and his students. I know this because there are some generations of those people who claim to be students of Prof. Al-Attas. Whenever they debate someone and that person disagrees with him, entail loss of adab. As if that's like a conversation stopper. Like, I have the card, I have loss of adab, and you cannot call me loss of adab because I studied with Prof. Al-Attas, I have picture with him. Astaghfirullah. Yes? Patience. Kindness. There are many, so these are the internal things that you need to have within you. Yes? And it's okay. I mean, it's okay to combine between these corrective measures of your worldview, that you need to be persistent, but hiaskan, hiaskan, that means to say, beautify your inward self with the Haddadian program, with the Ghazalian program. You must have an internal program also. Aside from the corrective measure of the worldview, pair your study of the worldview with either the works of Imam al-Haddad or Imam al-Ghazali or Syekh Abdul Samad Palembang. Yes, that means to say, where you work on your nafs. Yes, where you teach yourself that there are many debates that you win by staying away from. There are many debates of that nature. There are many debates in which you indulge in order to just satisfy your nafs. Don't enter and indulge into such debates. There are many more people that you win their friendships, not their minds. And then you work on their minds. These are the things that needs to be done. Yes? And then love your children. Love your wife. Yes? Because if children, they grow up in a family in which their fathers love them, if wives feel stable when their husbands love them, the children will grow into men and women of adab. They don't start with they tak ada dendam with the world, like that. So, yes, of different levels. Maybe Brother Hassan, with your experience in trying to effect the educational system, maybe you can give one or two advice also.
brother side. Masya-Allah. So apa ni? So perhaps what you can do if you want to really understand and eventually receive wisdom from Allah Taala, you need to read other books that actually help you to understand apa ni Western thought lah. That actually goes beyond the text itself. So yeah, after these five things, then insyaallah apa ni then hopefully we are prepared to receive that wisdom, and then eventually we we naturally will know how that then eventually you just know. So how-ness is very difficult, but to be prepared is something that's within our control. So let's prepare ourselves for that.
I think we have exceeded 11 o'clock. Apa tu, uh, I don't want to kill your interest. So we try to keep it within certain limits. I thank everyone, alhamdulillah, on behalf of the Sahibul Bait, for again thanking him for agreeing to host us, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open doors for him as he has opened his door for us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve our iman. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fortify our iman. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala count us amongst those who receive his inayah, who receive his hidayah, whom he grants tawfiq to follow the path of the prophets and the awliya and the ulama. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cause to descend upon our hearts love of him, love of his prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, love of recitation of the Quran, and love of the Ahlul Bayt. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us for all our mistakes, for our inept, for our inability to curb our own desires. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us proper guidance, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala befriend us with those whom he loves. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us mahabbah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open up his doors of mercy for us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make firm our hearts and convictions. Allahumma thabbitna, Allahumma thabbitna, Allahumma ya muqallibal qulubi wal absar, thabbit qulubana ala dinik. Rabbana la tuzigh qulubana ba'da idh hadaytana wa hab lana min ladunka rahmah innaka antal wahhab. اللهم افتح علينا فتوح العارفين، اللهم فقهنا في الدين، اللهم يا عالم الغيب والشهادة يا أرحم الراحمين ارحمنا، اللهم يا ربنا زدنا علما نافعا وارزقنا فهما. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد صلاة تحيا بها روحي وتنشط بها جوارحي ويقوى بها قلبي ويسري سرها في أولادي وأحبابي وأكون بها سعيدا مسعودا. اللهم اطوي مسافة البعد بيننا وبين حبيبك المصطفى، واجمع بيننا وبينه في هذا الدار وفي تلك الدار جحرة وخفا. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد النور الذات وسر السار في سائر الأسماء والصفات. اللهم يا ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا، ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا، ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار بالفضل سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.